Have you ever wondered what dark secrets lie beneath the waters of ancient African lakes? What if the terrifying creatures of folklore were real, and the curse they brought has been waiting for someone to awaken it? This is not just a tale, it's a warning from a forgotten world. Stay tuned, because once you know the truth about the Black Lake, there's no turning back. Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to like, comment, and share. Let's spread the mystery. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss the next part of this haunting journey. Now, let's uncover the secrets of Lake Nyamizi. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when Emeka, a young anthropology student from the city, arrived in the remote village of Oromi. Nestled on the edge of Lake Nyamizi, a body of water shrouded in mystery and fear, Oromi was unlike any place Emeka had ever seen. The air was thick with unease, as if the land itself whispered secrets that no outsider should know. The villagers, mostly quiet and reserved, eyed Emeka with caution as he stepped off the bus. Their expressions spoke volumes: fear, suspicion, and something darker. Doors were quickly closed, and children were ushered inside. Emeka couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't welcome, that something here resented his presence. His mission was simple: study the local folklore, gather data, and uncover the truth behind the village's long-standing curse. Tales of strange disappearances, mysterious drownings, and the shadow of a malevolent spirit that haunted the lake had been passed down through generations. But Emeka, grounded in reason and science, wasn't one to believe in superstitions. As the night deepened, he set up his equipment by the lake, the waters dark and still. But a strange sensation crept over him, a feeling that the lake was watching, waiting for him to make the first move. The journey had just begun, but was he ready for what he would find? The next morning, Emeka sought out the village's elder, Mama Jara, a woman whose age was impossible to guess. Her face, weathered by time, carried the weight of generations, and her piercing eyes seemed to see beyond the physical world. Her reputation as the keeper of the village's history was known far and wide, and Emeka was eager to hear her version of the stories he had only heard in hushed whispers. As he entered her small, humble hut, the air inside was thick with the scent of herbs and incense. Mama Jara sat silently at a wooden table, her eyes locked onto Emeka as if she had been waiting for him. Without greeting, she began to speak, her voice steady and low. "The lake is no place for those who do not understand its power," she said. "It is not just water, but a living thing, ancient, cursed, and unforgiving. The Abiku spirit lives there, a child born to die, bound to the lake for eternity. Those who disturb it awaken something darker. The Tokoloshe, a creature born of evil, manipulates those who are foolish enough to challenge the curse." Her words sent a chill down Emeka's spine, but he dismissed it as superstition. Still, Mama Jara's words lingered, and something in the air shifted. He could no longer ignore the growing sense of dread. Emeka returned to his guest house that evening, his mind racing with Mama Jara's cryptic warnings. He tried to brush off the unease gnawing at him, but the village's strange atmosphere had crept under his skin. As night fell and the shadows stretched across the village, a cold shiver ran down his spine. The air felt heavier, the silence more oppressive. Determined to prove that the stories were just that, stories, Emeka gathered his equipment and set out toward the lake. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light across the water's surface, which looked deceptively calm. Emeka started recording, capturing the sound of crickets and distant rustling, hoping to document the natural ambience for his research. But then he heard it, the softest of whispers, almost imperceptible over the sounds of the night. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but as the whispers grew louder, he realized they were calling his name. Emeka. The voice was distant, yet intimately close, like it was coming from deep beneath the water. A sudden coldness washed over him, and a thick fog rolled in, swallowing the shore in seconds. Panic surged through his chest as he glanced toward the water. Something was moving beneath the surface. Was it the wind or something more sinister? His camera flickered, capturing a shadowy figure beneath the water's surface. Then the whispers grew into a low, guttural hum. It was as if the lake was alive, and it was calling him in. The night had become unbearable. Emeka's heart raced as the eerie whispering continued, seeping into his thoughts. He gripped his camera tighter, trying to focus, but his hands were trembling. The water, once still, now seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The fog thickened, swirling around his feet, making every step feel heavier. Suddenly, a ripple broke the surface. At first, it was subtle, a slight disturbance in the water, like something large moving beneath. Then, as if summoned by the growing tension, a shadow emerged. It wasn't an animal or a boat. This figure was too fluid, too unnatural. The shadow was humanoid, but its form was distorted, rippling with a strange, translucent glow. Emeka's breath caught in his throat. He leaned closer, the camera recording every moment, every flicker of the figure beneath the surface. It didn't move like a normal being. It glided, shifting with the current, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Emeka blinked, certain he had seen it right. Two piercing eyes staring directly at him, watching, waiting. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, a low chant that seemed to rise from the very depths of the lake. Suddenly, the shadow vanished, sinking back into the dark waters with eerie silence. Emeka stood frozen, his skin crawling, knowing that whatever had been watching him wasn't just a figment of his imagination. The lake was alive. The next day, Emeka couldn't shake the haunting image of the shadowy figure beneath the water. His mind buzzed with questions, but the villagers were tight-lipped. He knew that if he wanted answers, he would have to get them himself. That afternoon, he wandered to the village market, hoping to speak with someone who might know more about the lake's curse. It wasn't long before he encountered Tariq, a fisherman who had lived in Oromi all his life. His weathered face was etched with years of hardship, and his eyes carried the burden of someone who had seen too much. When Emeka approached him, Tariq hesitated, but eventually spoke in a hushed tone. "The lake. It's not just water," Tariq began. "A long time ago, the villagers worshipped the spirits of the lake, the Jengu, who protected us. But then a man named Nkrumah, a tribal leader, killed the followers of the Jengu. He thought he could control the water spirits, but in doing so, he unleashed the curse. Now the spirits of the lake, the Abiku child and the Tokoloshe, are bound to it, and every year they claim a life." Emeka felt the weight of the old man's words. The curse was real, and he was standing on the edge of it. The lake's dark power was no myth. It was waiting for him. As night fell, Emeka found himself grappling with the growing sense of dread that had settled over him since arriving in Oromi. Tariq's story weighed heavily on his mind, and though he still clung to the belief that everything had a logical explanation, something in the air felt wrong. He couldn't shake the feeling that the village and the lake were closing in on him, suffocating him with their unspoken truths. That night, the whispers returned. They weren't just in the air now. They were inside his head, twisting his thoughts, pulling at his very sanity. At first, Emeka thought it was the wind, but the voices grew clearer, more distinct. "Emeka, come closer." The words wrapped around his mind like cold fingers. He couldn't escape them. He tried to ignore them, but they were relentless, growing louder and more urgent with each passing moment. Sleep became impossible. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open, as if the darkness itself was watching him. Suddenly, the faintest splash of water echoed through his window. It was as though the lake was calling him again, drawing him toward its depths. The next morning, Emeka woke to find his belongings, his camera, his notes, had been moved, scattered as if someone had rifled through them. And with each passing hour, the whispers grew louder. Something was watching him. The Tokoloshi was here, and it was playing with his mind. The line between reality and nightmare was beginning to blur. Emeka could no longer tell if the things he was experiencing were hallucinations or if the curse of Lake Nyamizi was truly taking hold of him. The whispers had become a constant presence in his mind, and every night they grew more insistent, more demanding. They weren't just words anymore. They were images, visions that played behind his eyes like a twisted film reel. One evening, Emeka couldn't resist the pull any longer. Despite his better judgment, he made his way back to the lake, driven by a force he couldn't explain. The moonlight reflected off the water in a ghostly glow, and the fog, thick and suffocating, curled around his legs. The air tasted bitter with the taste of salt and decay. He stood at the water's edge, staring into the black depths, when he saw someone, emerge from the lake. A figure, tall and shrouded in shadow, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through his soul. It moved slowly, deliberately, as though it was testing him, waiting for him to make a move. The whispers in his mind reached a fever pitch. "Come closer, Emeka. The truth awaits beneath the surface." His heart pounded in his chest, but something deep within urged him to step forward. What was it he was about to uncover? Was he ready for the truth? Emeka's breath quickened as he stepped closer to the water's edge, each movement feeling like it was no longer his own. The figure, a twisted reflection of some ancient being, stood motionless in the water, its eyes locked onto his. He tried to look away, but it was as if the figure had anchored him in place, pulling him deeper into its gaze. The whispers in his mind were now a cacophony of voices, all chanting one word in unison: reveal. His feet moved without his consent, as if guided by an unseen force. The cold water lapped at his ankles, then his calves, until he was standing waist deep in the lake, the dark depths pressing against him. Panic surged through him, but his body didn't respond. The shadow in the water was no longer distant. It was now within arm's reach. The figure's mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp, gleaming teeth, and it spoke. "You've awakened us, Emeka. You should not have come." Its voice was a low, guttural growl that reverberated through his chest. In that moment, the truth hit him. The lake wasn't just a cursed body of water. It was a prison, and now he had released the thing that had been trapped for centuries. A surge of terror flooded through him as the water began to pull him under, the figure reaching for him with terrifying speed. There was no escape. Emeka's body fought against the water's pull, but it was no use. The cold was suffocating, and the weight of the lake seemed to drag him deeper into its depths with every passing second. Panic gripped his chest as the figure emerged fully from the water, its shape now towering and grotesque, its skin translucent, almost liquid, with a sickly glow emanating from within. "You should have never come, Emeka." The voice echoed around him, not just from the figure, but from all directions, whispering, roaring, pressing in on his mind. He struggled, his limbs heavy, but he could feel the cold fingers of the water wrapping around his legs, pulling him closer to the creature. The whispers were overwhelming, as though the entire lake was alive, suffocating him with its malevolent presence. Desperation clawed at him. He had no choice but to confront the horror before him. In a last-ditch effort, Emeka reached for the only weapon he had left, his camera. Holding it up, he took one final shot, capturing the figure in a flash of light. The lake roared in fury, but for a brief moment, Emeka felt a sudden sense of power. The figure recoiled, and the water loosened its grip on him. But that moment was fleeting. It was too late. The figure reached for him once more, and as the darkness closed in, Emeka knew the curse had been awakened, and now it would consume him. Emeka's world was swallowed by darkness. The last thing he saw was the monstrous figure lunging toward him, its glowing eyes filled with fury. Then everything went black. When Emeka awoke, he found himself lying on the muddy shore of the lake, gasping for air. His body ached, as if every bone had been broken and mended again. The whispers had stopped, but an eerie silence filled the air, thick and oppressive. The lake's waters were still, almost unnaturally so, as if they were waiting for something, or someone. He tried to rise, but his limbs felt foreign, disconnected. As he struggled to stand, he noticed something strange. His reflection in the water had changed. His eyes, once full of youthful curiosity, were now cold, empty, and dark, like the lake itself. Then he heard it, a faint voice. But this time it wasn't in his mind. It was real, calling his name from the water. Emeka. His heart skipped a beat and a chill ran down his spine. The creature, the curse, it wasn't gone. It had only been waiting for him to awaken. Emeka understood then. He wasn't leaving the lake. He had become part of its curse, and now, like the Abiku, he was bound to it forever. The lake had claimed another soul, and it would never let him go.